I'm just going to leave this running. Oh, hi. Hey, that's Kat with Winged Sabre Historical Fencing.
Hello there.
All right. This is in response to a direct question levied to me on a forum, which is, hey, you mentioned there are some real similarities between Polish saber and cross-cutting and Hungarian saber. And what are those differences and what are the similarities? Okay. For starters, Polish cross-cutting is reconstructed. It's not a living lineage. We don't even have a specific manual per se for it. We have historical descriptions and accounts of how they were trained, which are, in my opinion, good enough to basically reconstruct it. But it is an experimental archaeology level of knowledge. That's very different from a living lineage. That said, we know that cross-cutting comes from using moulinets, and using moulinets where one line of attack is then crossed over by the moulinet for the next line of attack, as opposed to a double cut like this, like Team Link might teach, okay? So that basic movement, if you have a bind, is called a croisette. So Kat, if you'll cut one. I, Polish saber guy, may do this and knock it right out of your hand, and now it's very easy for me to step through and cut. All right, now, I didn't need to actually strain your wrist, sorry about that. Delicate wrist, I have to be careful. So for the rest of today's filming, you'll see me being super, super careful, and she'll be really super compliant. It's not bullshito, it's delicate wrists. You were wearing the wrist brace on your other wrist, so I thought that one was good. So,
it was.
Step one, you notice there was momentum in that cut. We train to make our cuts and control them so I can stop this right there and I don't actually hurt her. If we were doing this for realsies, stay still, I'm not going to hurt you. I would make this cut and I would pull it through and make that cut. And even being very restrained with a boffer, you could see Kat's skeleton moving. This is why Polish saber fencers have a reputation for hitting hard. It's actually completely present in Italian training as well. I don't know for the French. I would have to go look it up, and I'm not as keen on the old French manuals as I should be. There's just too many manuals and not enough time while I'm constantly working on publishing. When you are dumping the momentum and pulling the cut through target, you hit through. We tend not to. But we also tend to make what the Austro-Hungarians will call switch moulinets, or this particular cross cut. And this is very, very traditional. In fact, for example, 19th century novel called The Town in Black. There are two people going to fence, and one is using the so-called new scientific Western fencing, and the other one is fencing from the older method, as they call it, from the turning of the wrist. Both are equally matched fencers. Both are respected fencers. And the real situation is they're going to wind up dueling, and they do kind of casually duel, and social circumstances are going to push them to be enemies when really they would much rather be friends. So here's an example of that switch moulinet performed in the more Hungarian style. So if you cut one, boom, parry one, cut four. Now, I was super, super compliant, so I got tapped with the false edge while I was being so. But you notice I have done the same flip, flip. Instead, however, I have cut one, boom, kept alignment as I move to the second part of the croisette. Of course, boffers are weird. If we were doing this in steel, I could throw that into a big expulsion and strain her wrist even more. That wouldn't be fun for anybody. Our lineage uses this alignment in a very big way. We also tend to use a grip with these two fingers, resulting in what I call the cage, which allows for very, very rapid fist cutting. There's a YouTube of me doing it out there somewhere. I can fist cut with a heavy saber nearly as fast as some people can cut with an Olympic saber using this grip. It's not that hard. If I'm going to pull from down here to make my wrist cuts, my hand is in a slightly different position and my geometry changes. Jerzy Miklaszewski has a video out on differences between Hungarian and Polish fencing, and while my scholarly opinion is that he paints with a little bit too big a brush, that is a danger that everybody faces when they generalize. And in principle, he's right. Poles tend to hold here, which is why we see thumb rings being really convenient for pulls, and almost no Hungarians are using them, whereas Hungarians will tend to hold here. And that creates a different engagement geometry. If I'm here, this doesn't do me much good, so I may as well be up here and threaten a blow. And you see lots of old artwork where this is the guard, especially because in a crowded mass of people, if my saber's down here, I no longer have room to fight. There's too many people too close. I have to keep my weapon up, or else I'm dead. It's just that simple. For example, the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396. The Ottoman troops fighting Westerners literally ran out of space with which to swing their sabers. And the French and Burgundian crusaders resorted to using their daggers in the melee and completely routed the unit they were fighting because they weren't used to dealing with a bunch of heavy armored dagger fighters. This space problem is very, very real. Now, if I'm here, this suddenly gives me lots of good. Here, this is where my tip is gone. This is a very different geometry. By having that tip out in front, any movement I make with the saber fundamentally affects where cat can and can't attack. This geometry and this geometric difference alone is enough to make for great big engagement differences when we play. And I haven't had enough time to play with Polish saber trained guys, but hopefully that will happen in the future and we can all go to town. And also I can like cut loose and actually hit with momentum like we do, they do, and we can all bruise each other up and have a great time. It'll be awesome. Mutual bruising is okay when everyone agrees to it.
It's consensual bruising.
Yes. So, Kat.
Yes.
When I'm here versus here, how do you perceive this as an erstwhile opponent? Both are valuable, but what's the difference you see? Or if I'm here, if I really want to imitate the Siniavsky brothers. Here versus here.
I find the second one far more threatening and more like a puzzle that I would have to draw you out of in order to do some meaningful attack.
Cool, and that may be style bias. What this gives you is a threat. Now, this is vulnerable to tempo cutting and tempo thrusting. There is no question about it. If you can manage your distance and catch this guy halfway through their moulinet, staple arm to chest, he's done. On the other hand, the moulinets and the cuts, cutting this way, are ridiculously fast. So your sense of timing has to be really good. Whereas here, I have to do a little bit of pulling back if I'm going to do anything other than a really direct cut. But on the other hand, if she does anything offensively against me, she picks a side. Oh, look, I've got a bind, and what's threatening her? So, the difference is in geometry. The difference is in how you hold the saber and how that dictates how the saber is held in midair. Yeah, a fist grip can be really stiff. And if you have a really loose wrist to account for that, that can actually be an advantage. A fist grip can also be very loose. And if you have the use of the fingers, as Hungarians tend to, or posting on the back of the saber, as Hungarians also tend to, long before the Olympic things, this is not an Olympic trick, you also get a change in geometries that affects the change in the fight. All right? So, there's your answer. Have fun. Go play with either one. They're both great systems. I will turn the camera off. Bye-bye. We've got more videos and content coming, so if you liked what you saw and it was useful for you, please stab the like button, /subscribe, and punch the little bell icon so that you're notified immediately when new content comes available. Thanks, and go do the thing.